Okay, Surds part 1. Now, with this part 1, I first want to ask, what is a surd? Now, it's usually the sign. Okay, we call it a root or a cube depending on what's in front. Okay, what n is equal to. Okay, so a surd is an irrational number, which means it cannot be determined exactly. It's non-reoccurring, means there's always a random number. It's not a reoccurring number. And then it's infinite. It goes on and on and on. Pi is a good example of that. It's non-reoccurring and it's infinite. Okay, so that means it's an irrational number. Okay, so the next question is there any restrictions? Yes, there is. So if n is an even number, it's very important that it's an even number. So when n is an even number, a, whatever is underneath it, must be positive. So a needs to be bigger than 0. Like if a is smaller than 0, let's say -10, and here it's usually like a 2, it's a root, okay? It is imaginary. Now, imaginary numbers and negatives under like square roots, you don't have to worry about this now. This comes at university, or if you want to study it further, then you will be working with imaginary numbers. For now, just know that it exists. So as soon as n is not an even number and there's a negative underneath, you will get an answer. So cube root -8 is equal to -2. So there's your answer. So the restriction is if n is a positive number, a, or whatever is underneath, needs to be bigger than 0. Okay, otherwise it's an imaginary number. So no negatives underneath, unless it's an odd number. Okay, then please remember that if you have something squared, the answer is going to be positive and negative. Okay, so the root cancels out the square, and what you do on one side, you do on the other side. So x is equal to positive and -6. Okay, please remember that. Then you've been working with this now for a while. So power of a root. Like we've done before, whatever is on top goes to the bottom. Okay? And whatever is at the bottom goes on top. So that's how they change. Okay. Then the next step is, please remember that a root and a square cancels out. So the root of 9 is 3, but 3 squared is 9. So these two, therefore, cancels out. So as soon as you get that, you can just write 9. Okay. And also, so this is with the exponent rules that you've done already. So you should know this by this time. Again, so this m, the exponent m, can be outside of a bracket exponent as well. So that way you can manipulate your question. So as soon as it's something difficult, you can manipulate it. So for instance, let's say 8 to the power of 2 is the same as 64, and that equals 4. And in the same way, 3 to the power of 8, 2 equals to 2 to the power of 2 equals 4. So as you manipulate them, depending on the difficulty of your question and the way you find it best to answer, you can manipulate. But this is, like, yes, you can just put that in your calculator and get 4. But in many of these questions where they say simplify, the words usually follow without using a calculator, and then you need to show these steps. You need to show how you manipulated them, or what was your next step to finding it. So please note, like as we did before, a root of a power where the top one goes to the bottom and the bottom one goes to the top, and then it becomes an exponent. The root and the square cancels out. It's the same as when it's to the power of 3 and 3 outside. Those also cancel out. Okay, so please note that, and that is part 1 for surds.